Hello, my name is Bradley, and I'm your host of The Internal Game. So, I took a poll the other day to see what video you guys wanted to see next, based on questions that I get asked, or basically requests. A lot of times I get requests of like, "What's my story?" Get requests on, "Hey, can you talk about this? Talk about that?" So I divvied it up into two, and it was my story and attachments. And oddly enough, I would be able to even put in the attachments in this video because that's pretty much what my life was like. Uh, a life of outside in, right? A long time of thinking it was outside in. And anytime we're doing that, we are going to be attached, for sure. So it was a long time before I really grasped the idea of consciousness as reality, and that as within, so without, right? But I was born in Springdale, Arkansas, a long time ago, back in the 1900s. In June of 1990, my mother was 15 years old when she had me. A month later, turned 16, but she was not really able to take care of me. So my great grandparents, which was her grandparents, her dad was my pap, and his parents, my great grandparents, we lived in a duplex. It was me and my great grandparents and my pap on this side. So I was around a bunch of older people when I was young, for sure. It was pretty much just me. My mom has three other kids that she had later on, but I did not live with them. And yeah, it was me and my grandparents and my pap. So I was I think a normal kid. I think sometimes they thought I was smarter than I was because I was raised by like no other. I mean, there was like no other kids. It was just me and like adults, and they talked to me like adults. So I remember in school they would say things like, "Oh, he's smart," and the older I got, the more I realized it was probably just because I was around like adults that talked to me like an adult, right? And there wasn't much of kid stuff going on. Uh, in the morning, I remember even watching like black and white television shows before school with my great grandpa. So wasn't much cartoons or anything like that for me. It's probably to this day why I don't really watch cartoons. Um, I didn't really have like a any knowing a lot of what was going on like outside of school, outside of uh, kindergarten, first, second grade, things like that. Like a lot of other kids, they got into like sports and things like that, and I did not. My grandparents were not really; they were just old school, pretty much. And yeah, I just kind of lived with them, really. I had big glasses. I had big glasses, had silver teeth, had some enamel issues with my teeth growing up, and so yeah, I had silver teeth and big glasses. I always hung out with my pap. My grandma was my mom. uh, my great grandpa and my pap were like tough guys, right? So like I had around them, I would try to be tough because that's what I thought like men did, you know. And it's not that they don't. I just felt like that was my idea of like boy time. And then I'd get around my grandma and I'd be like, oh, like mama's boy, grandma's boy kind of thing. So two different worlds, that's for sure. And I was, let's just say, um, third grade on, I guess. I mean, I ended up being a pretty popular kid. I was confused a lot. I didn't really know. The best way to put it is I never felt comfortable in my own skin, right? And that's going to tie into later on in life. But if I had to put it into something, it'd be that I just didn't feel comfortable in my own skin, and I got a lot of attention for uh, like certain talents or things that I did. Like my pap put me in like martial arts at a young age, and I like excelled in martial arts. And I liked doing that because I got attention from him and my great grandpa of being, this young, uh, talented guy that was in, combat stuff. So like I liked that. I liked the validation. I felt like I got more attention from them when that was happening. And then with my grandma, I was able to just be, a kid. It's what it felt like. So yeah, going through school, had friends. Martial arts, just a curious kid like anyone else would be. And then I remember when my pap, my great grandpa, they told me that my grandma had got cancer, and I was like 12 years old. And so uh, my grandma passed away when I was 13, but it was so hard for me because I grew up in church a lot and like a Pentecostal background. And I remember my grandma was telling me, she was like, hey, God's not going to put anything on your shoulders that you can't handle. So like in my head as a kid, I remember thinking, oh, well, that she's not going to die because like I wouldn't be able to handle that. And I knew what she meant now, but back then I didn't really. And so then my grandma ended up dying. And it was a really, really hard year for me. I was in 8th grade. I remember not going to school anymore. I used to just like, I had a little moped and I would drive it out to like the lake back in Arkansas, and I would just be sad out there and like talk to my grandma and things like that. And I ended up failing 8th grade because they're like, hey, you need to go to summer school because you've missed a lot of class. Like, we understand that you're going through some stuff, but I didn't really care. So I ended up failing 8th grade, and then anyway, the next year, I'm trying to condense this down as much as I can, but also get some important points in here. The next year, I met my girlfriend at that time, and actually, it wasn't the next year; it was the following year after that when I actually entered 9th grade, and it was like a perfect setup because she had, my mother was involved in drugs. A lot of my family, like my cousins and things like that, they were involved in drugs. It was kind of a chaotic place, like in my family. Even though I lived with my great grandparents and my grandpas or my papa stuff, it was yeah, it was we still had other family. It was definitely chaotic a lot. And so when I met this girl around that time, my pap had met a new woman, and I got introduced into her life as well, and she was like my stepmom, I guess, in that sense. And but I spent a lot of time like thinking about this girl because like that was like my safe haven is what it felt like. And I remember talking to her a lot on the phone. She her dad was a professional, like he was in the medical field, but he had struggled with drugs before that. And so like we had a lot in common. And so like we were kind of each other's safe havens and things like that. And I didn't know that I ended up being a really scared of abandoned kid. Like I didn't know that. I didn't know consciousness was reality. I didn't know that people felt the way I felt, kind of thing, right? And then later on, she ends up breaking up with me, and it was devastating for me. Like I felt like I lost my grandma. Um, the breakup. My grandpa had met my great grandpa, not my pap. My great grandpa had met a new woman that was not my grandma. That was hard for me to take, and she did not like me, and she didn't really want me around. So my grandpa just kind of let that happen, which is okay. I mean, no trouble with him at all anymore. But like it was I ended up going full time, but like to live with my pap and my stepmother, and so yeah, I just remember wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard. So like I started like making music. I started playing sports. Like, and I was good. And in all honesty, I've been good at pretty much everything that I've ever done. But like it was always for some sort of validation. Like that's where I got the same way I did when I was a kid in martial arts. Like I got my validation from people thinking that I was cool or liking me or things like that. I had like womanizer phase in high school. I had like all this stuff to try to be cool, right? Because I didn't feel cool. And it's never going to be enough. You hear me talk about that a lot, right? But I really wasn't outside in kind of kid. I didn't know any better, right? And I started making music, and like it wasn't that I never really had like a passion for it. I just liked it, and I liked it because I got attention from it. Like, and people are like, oh, that's good. But like the shitty part about things like that is that like what happens when they say they don't like it anymore. Your whole world kind of comes crumbling down. That didn't really happen, but I basically just lived outside in. And I remember in high school, there's a lot of stuff I believe in now. Basically, I saw mom a few times, mom quite a few times. My mom has really struggled with drugs, a lot of instability as far as like my life is concerned. But I didn't have so much instability when my pap was with my newfound stepmom, who we have a great relationship to this day, but it wasn't always like that. I was just an ornery teenager kid, had a lot of a big chip on my shoulder, felt like the world was really against me, and it's what it felt like. Yeah, it definitely felt like that. And I remember just holding on to like popularity, holding on to like to the idea of trying to be cool and tough and what things look like on the outside. And I remember it was like about time for everyone to start going to college. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go to recording school out there in Phoenix. So I went to this place called the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences, and I was 20 years old. Everyone had already started off their college career that I grew up with, and I went to Phoenix by myself. And it was the first time I left my pap. My pap has been my constant my whole life, as you can tell, right? And I went out there, and it was when I really started drinking. Like, I had drank before, like clearly in high school and stuff. I'd done that a few times, but I never really was like latched onto it like that. When I was in Phoenix and I was by myself, and I think I came to this point where I was like, man, I'm chasing some dream that I don't even know if I want. Like, I don't even know if I like it. I just know that people, after I said I'm going to recording school, I was like, oh my God, Brad's gonna make it. Da, da, da. So it had this like, and everyone was proud of me, and it had this big like impact on me. And I was just like, man, like I don't want to let people down. And I just remember drinking heavily. And I mean, there's one night that I was like, I'm not gonna drink. I was 20 years old. I'm not gonna drink. And I remember laying down, and like my hands started getting shaky because I drank all day, but I had no idea this is what this was from. And I just remember like just my hands are shaking. I was like, man, I can't fall asleep. This will like, feel really, really weird, like kind of sick. And I remember like, okay, I'm just gonna get drunk. I remember drinking, and the shake stopped. And I didn't know what it was at that time, but I remember being like, okay, I don't think this is good. And like that was a moment that I'll never forget, because it let me know that I crossed some kind of line with alcohol. And I started, I'm gonna say failing out of school, but I stopped going as much. And, people there thought that I was like gonna be really good because I had came in there really good and all that stuff. And I just felt like I was letting everyone down. And yeah, I ended up finishing up there, but I moved to Dallas after that, and I brought back a problem, like a real problem. Like I could not stop drinking alcohol. I would still try to make music. I'd make just enough for people to be like, oh, he's still doing it, and then I'd fall off the wayside again. And I started a long journey of just self-hate. And if you follow this channel a little while, or anyone like it, or anything like it, like that like how we see ourselves, we tend to see the world that way. And so I just had this extra blame, this really strong blame on life. Like, man, why did I lose this? Why is mom like this? Where's my dad? How come he never showed up? Like all this stuff, right? And I'm condensing this as much as I possibly can. I had relationships in and out of there that were toxic, for sure. It was mainly me. It was me. I just meant like there was a lot of chaos. Like if I could put a huge time frame in my life, I would just say chaos. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been cheated on. I've done the cheating. I've had people be aggressive with me, and I've been aggressive. Like I've done the whole chaotic human experience. At 23, I ended up in a rehab, and I was living in Dallas at that point, but it was in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm in Florida now, but it was in West Palm Beach, and I remember like getting there. It was one of the lowest places I'd been, and I just remember thinking like, man, like I'm only 23, so I can get this figured out. And I didn't really take it too seriously. I ended up meeting someone in there that I ended up having a baby with, and yeah, she moved to Dallas. She decided to move back to Florida during this time. I had a few more months sober after rehab, and I drank again and just started all over again. Man, just more chaos and more chaos and more chaos from 23 to 27, when I've had 3 DWIs. I mean, I don't really know how to put this all in a time frame, but like it's just a lot of chaos, lots of chaos. 27, I ended up in rehab again, this time in Port St. Lucie, Florida. And I linked up with a person that I knew, that I met in rehab, that was actually working at a rehab at this particular time. Like later on, he was doing a lot better, and he got me in. And same thing, met a woman in there. You try to distract yourself, kind of like I was doing my whole life, trying to distract myself within a relationship, trying to distract myself in making some music, trying to distract myself and trying to be cool, trying to distract myself and what people thought of me, trying to distract myself, drinking, trying to distract, like everything I could to run away from self. I was all about it. Again, outside in. So But in this particular rehab, I remember it was like a movie day. It was like a Friday, and usually we watch like a cool movie. And then this day, like people were talking, and I just remember being like, "Man, like, can you guys shut up so we can watch a movie? Like, they're not gonna let us watch a movie." And they're like, "Okay, well, we got a movie for you." And they put on The Shift by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I'll never forget that moment. I remember like I was kind of looking down, and everyone was kind of being like, "Oh, this movie, this movie." I think I was even kind of like that too, but I was just ready for something to play so they maybe start shutting up. And I heard this guy talk, Dr. Wayne Dyer, and within the first few seconds of the movie, I remember looking up. I was like, "Who's this guy?" Like there was something in it for me. I could like I get like a little emotional even thinking about that moment because it was like I remember just looking up and was like, "Man, who's this guy?" I was like, "I don't know who he is, but I feel like he knows something that I need to know." And like anyone that knows me knows that I have like I have synesthesia, so I see sound and stuff. It's a whole nother story, but like I have issues when I don't have issues, but like if I'm watching a movie, I'm always like, "Hey guys, can you be quiet?" Like I really try to hone in on what's happening right here, right? And I didn't hear, and they didn't stop talking, but I didn't hear a word from them. I didn't. Like I remember just being like so zoned in on this movie, and he was talking about like shifting your perspective and like what was kind of important and what and like what's not, and like how we waste life and like and resentment, and just this amazing story. And like there was something that changed in me that I did that I never went back from. Granted, it wasn't like I walked out of that rehab and was like, "Oh, I found the way," right? It wasn't really like that, but I wasn't like that at all. I actually ended up that same girl that I was distracting myself with. I ended up having a child with her as well. That's why I say like this story here is not. I don't ever want you guys to see me talk on here and be like, "Oh, this guy is just has all these answers." And it's like I have a long history of trying to find myself on the outside, attached to the outside. And so and it hasn't always been pretty. It's perfect and beautiful now when I look back at it and like how things have shaped into being perfect, but like at that time it was really chaotic. And so but anyway, I'm just like anyone else, and anyway, so but there was something in me that shifted, the shit like it was like it wasn't like I like got it or anything like that, but it was one of those things where like I knew that I wasn't doing what I needed to be doing, and like there was like it was like really against self at that point. And so I ended up leaving. Um, and by the way, we didn't even know if I was the father. And this sounds like a Jerry Springer episode. We didn't know because she had a boyfriend that I did not know about. Anyway, I moved back to Arkansas for a little bit, and after I left rehab, and decided to come back. I drank, decided to come back. My papa was like, "Hey, go, like go, like you need to get yourself figured out again." And he'd already beat but at this point, this was so hard telling stories. There's so much stuff that I've left out, but I think you kind of get the gist. My papa got cancer at that point, but he had beat it, so I felt safe to kind of come back. And yeah, that was like a time that I stayed sober. I stayed sober for like 2.5 years. I was doing well. I had a relationship with this other person, the one I was with before I met my wife. And one day she broke up with me, and that's how I found the law of assumption. And I remember one weekend, one weekend, I think she broke up with me like on a Friday or something. And I did all the little affirmations they told me to do. I found this channel called Create Your Future, and it was like, "Hey, this is how like you created this, now you can affirm this." And I was like, "Oh fuck yeah," right? And I did it. And then Sunday, I promise you, this person like mirrored back these affirmations. I was like, "This is the best thing that I've ever. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened." I was like, I'm golden from here on out." A month later, she broke up with me again, and then same thing happened. Got her back with the affirmations, but I didn't really know how important the state of being was. I didn't even know anything about it really. I just knew about affirmations. Maybe that's why it seems like I'm against them, but I'm not. But like that's how I found it, and getting a person. So like, don't ever let me confuse you. And then a month later after that, the breakup happened again, and then a couple of days later, my pap died, and it was like huge for me. Like I remember being like, "Wow, I just lost everything." I was like, "Man, I just learned about a law of assumption, and I've affirmed this, I affirmed that, and now everything's gone." Like, what the fuck? And I remember drinking. And a month later, or a couple months later, I met my wife that I have now. And when I first met her, I told her, I was like, hey, listen, I've just drank. I had almost 3 years sober. And to be honest with you, like, I'm in a really good place. I don't really know when I'm gonna stop. I was like, I'm not gonna lie to you about anything. I'm not really a liar like that. I was like, but when it comes to drinking, I'm going to lie to you. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'm gonna tell you that I'm not drinking, but I am. And she's like, oh, okay. She's like, my stepdad was an alcoholic, and she's like, it's okay. Like, and I was like, no, you don't understand. And my wife actually took me to 9 detoxes that year. She stuck by my side. Later on, she had enough and was like, hey, nope. She let it go. I was staying in this is 2021. I stayed in a sober living house, and once again felt alone. I didn't have any family. I didn't have any. This isn't to pour me anything, but like this is what clinging to the outside and not knowing who you are like had led me, or me doing. I won't say anything about you, but it had led me there again alone. It led me there again, wondering why me. How whatever this like getting back on love assumption videos like affirmer from my wife again, and she was dating somebody else at this point, and as she should have moved on. And again, that was clearly my fear. But like, I wasn't the best boyfriend. I wasn't the best anything. I had completely abandoned self, and I had done it way before I even met her. And so we get back together, right? I think I've told the story on a couple one-on-ones. Like, there was a few like weeks where I was like talking to her, like, no, please come back. Da, 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 da. And she was like, I really want to be with you, but I can't. She's like, I can't trust you. And da, 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 da. I was like, I know. And so I started the affirming thing again, because that's what I knew. I was like, hey, she loves me. Only me. And sure enough, I didn't really see much. I mean, we were still in talking with her, but like, I knew she was with somebody. And finally one day I just said, okay, I don't care. And I started like going to work, and I started like working out and taking care of myself. And then there she was. That's why I'm like big on the whole, hey, drop it for a little while. Because once I did that, it was a thing. Sorry, someone just booked a session. And then, anyway, fast forward. Still not getting the self-concept idea. Still not getting the whole power of now I've been reading. Still not get like scared. I mean, still living in constant fear, because why not? Why I've always been looking for like when the next shoe drops. Oh, this is too good to be true. Like, my life sucks, so this can't be that good. Like, something's gonna happen. I'm not the best option, so somebody's clearly looking for something else. Like, I just lived in those states like that. And so we got back together, and again, a few months later, my internal judgments, I wasn't able to get over the whole like she dated somebody else, right? And by the way, guys, like, my wife, like, it wasn't just like, granted, it was a reflection of me. I was worried that she was gonna do that. I was fearful. I was not feeling the best option. All these things, but even if these things weren't true, what this person went with through me, like with my alcoholism, and she still was there for me, and finally it just was too much. Like, she should have ran. So I don't like, she should have. And yeah, so we split again. This time I moved back to Arkansas, and I would get back with family. It was good, because I was like, man, I hadn't been around family in a long time. I didn't think I had anybody. Like, I started to rebuild my relationship with my stepmother. I was around my stepbrother, who's like my brother, closest brother I have, pretty much. Actually, 100%. And we had a good relationship. I got an apartment there, and then my wife called. Me and my wife were talking. We got married, obviously, in the time we got back together. But again, the story thing is, anyways. So and we were talking. She's like, she wanted me to come back here, and this was in Florida, and I was in Arkansas, and I'd started the YouTube channel. And I started it because I was like, man, I know this stuff, but I need to hold myself accountable. And I started to realize the importance of state of being. I started to realize the importance of the present moment. I started to actually look back at my life and not hate it. I started to actually look back at it and say, you know what, like, this is all beautiful, and it's okay. Like, it led me to more of an understanding. And because I assure you guys, like, if I didn't have all the pain that I went through, I wouldn't be able to be compassionate with you. I wouldn't be able to understand you anytime that you called and said, or a comment and say, hey, this is what's going on. Like if I had just had this perfect life, you know, it's all perfect, but you know what I mean, like where nothing happened, I wouldn't be able to understand. I'd be like, oh, just do this. But I know what that's like, and I've made every bad decision, and I've also been through on the other end of other people making bad decisions, like especially growing up. So I know what it's like to hurt. I know it's like all that stuff, but I know it's not necessary anymore. And so I made this channel, and I was making a video a day. I was in Arkansas, and I remember I had this one slip up, and I drank, and I ended up in the hospital. Like, and it wasn't good. I almost died. And I remember getting out of the hospital and going back to my apartment and being like, man, like I suck. Like I suck. Like, how am I ever gonna figure this stuff out? Like, I even have a channel that's talking about presence and da da da. Like, and I remember telling myself, man, but I'm also human too. And I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna keep this up because I'm figuring things out, and I'm with me. And I got for once in my life, I have to not abandon myself on this. This is what I love to do. And for some reason, like I'm being called to make, like, I don't really believe in being called, but like there was something in these YouTube videos and these teachings and me learning that like I just felt like I had to be doing this, and it saved my it actually saved my life, saved my marriage, saved a lot of things, like these teachings, mainly implementing them, but yeah. And then I got back and made a video on the channel, and I said it's since deleted, but it was up for a long time, and I talked about like, hey guys, I drank, and I didn't have many subscribers, which is okay. There's like maybe a couple hundred, and some people were like, hey, thank you for sharing that, being truthful. But like, and when I did that, I was like, oh hey, maybe this is okay, like to be myself, because I was like scared of like, oh, you have this crazy past, and you were drunk, and you had shitty relationships, and your mom left, and like how can you embody this state of perfection, and you know, and like so when I started realizing this stuff, I was like, man, like it's all a state of perfection. I'm always God, you're always God, you know. God forbid we be human. God forbid, you know what I mean? Like that's like I said, like God forbid I fucking make some mistakes or whatever. Like whatever it happened, like it led me right here, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I just remember having like more thoughts like that, and I kept it up, and I ended up moving back here. Me and my wife were back together. It took shape during making these film or making these videos. It took shape again, and I wasn't really talking about specific people back then though. I was more so talking about like presence and just teachings I had been reading and learning. And then I get back here, and yeah, I got better. And I don't mean better in the sense of like I was worse, but I do mean like I got in different states. I had different ideas about things. The channel started to grow in December, and it was about 8 months after 9 months after I started April 1st. And but again, even in that time, I wasn't really confident in myself because I thought that I was less than. I knew these teachings were true, but I thought that I was less than. I thought that because I had kids with different women, and that like I was a drunk and all this stuff, that like I how could I be on here talking about like what I'm talking about? And like that's kind of the beauty of it. I remember reading about Alan Watts, about how he had struggled with alcohol, and then Neville Goddard, how he drank alcohol. I don't want to say struggle with alcohol for Alan Watts, I mean that, but like they were big drinkers. He had Alan Watts' kids say, hey man, he wasn't that good of a dad. And it kind of let me be me for a second. Like just like knowing that like, hey, you know what, like no one's quote unquote has the perfect human experience. But it is perfect. Like when you get like in a better state and you kind of realize that like, holy shit, there's nothing really fundamentally like this way or that way. Like it's kind of just an experience. It's just states of being. And then you're in that state of being has certain experiences that come with it, certain circumstances that come with it. And even though it's personal because it's you, it's not personal out there. It's just responding to you, you know? And I looked at like all the things that Alan Watts had done. And mainly it was just more so of the belief in myself that like I was worthy of even teaching these things. And the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? I know it's helped me. Like I know it has. I know it's helped my relationships. I know it's helped my like anything. It has made me a completely different being, or a different human as far as that's concerned. Like I look the same, but like I'm not anything near the same. I still have that big heart that I had that was just really scared. Like if I could put it into words. It was just like I just was scared my whole life. I was scared of being left. I was scared of leaving. I was scared of people thinking badly about me. I was scared of people thinking good about me because then I had some kind of expectation. I just like there wasn't anything that I just was scared. That's why I really embarked on alcohol the way I did, because like I didn't feel comfortable in my own body. I was scared of everything, and like that was like my only way I knew how to not feel that. And really, it actually made it worse. So that's kind of, but doesn't everything, like if you're scared of being alone and you cling to somebody and they end up leaving you, doesn't that make it worse? Like it's a different addiction, but it's an addiction nonetheless. It's an attachment nonetheless. It's saying, hey, out here is what I need for it to feel better inside, and that's never gonna happen. So um, I became more confident in being able to do this stuff, and just being saying, hey, that's not gonna, maybe not, it's not for everybody, but it's for the people that are where I'm at. Like that's all that really matters. Like, and I know that if I can, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And like I love doing this, and I don't need to be creating a bunch of limitations and fear on why I can't. And it was fine. And for like finally, once in my entire life, I found something I love to do. I found something that like I did for, like that I do for just because, like to not get recognition, to not get like granted if I do, right, but I don't make the videos for that reason. And like that start, like in the beginning I'm gonna be like, oh man, like I only got this many subscribers, maybe I need to do these many teachings, maybe I need to change it up. It still was a little outside focus, but that's okay. And then when I started to realize like, oh, I love this, like it became like my way of life and like what I love to do. And like even if I didn't have YouTube, I'd still be doing something with this kind of stuff because I love it. And I love when people like are able to see that, to see themselves through me, and me to see myself through them. And I just love the journey that the whole thing took shape on. So when people are telling me, hey, like this happened, it's like, man, and people, especially one-on-ones, have heard me say, hey, let's not focus on the past too much. I do get it, and yeah, you're right, from childhood and things like that is why that we have certain, beliefs and outlooks on things. That is why, for sure. But we don't have to keep living there. And that was like a big realization for me too, because I was like, man, like all of that, I just need to consciously make different decisions and about self and about like, or about how I look at self, like until it becomes more of a prominent way of being. A lot of that was just easier to do by doubting the old one, doubting that's even real. That's why I say it's just thoughts, right? I know I left out a lot of stuff, but it was chaotic. And and all of the time after, trying to get my wife back, or trying to do this, or like it was all about programming. I had the headphones in, trying to program myself asleep. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, how long did I have it? Like I know what it's like to be obsessed with manifestation content. I know what it's like to be obsessed with trying to be anywhere and have anything other than where I'm at and have what I have right now. I know that. But I also know that, and I really know this now, is that like it's inside first, outside second. And this simple knowing, this simple shift all alone can really let you like be in control of your life. It lets you not take things as permanent out there, not to attach to them. Like now I can have things and they can come or they can go. Not that I can't, say an assumption, or I mean, create stories or whatever and keep there, or whatever I want to do, I can do just like you can. But it's more so like I really appreciate things because it's the world of form and everything comes and goes. I don't find myself in them. I don't find myself in my wife. I don't find myself in these YouTube videos. I don't find myself in any of these things. I love them. And the only way that I can actually love them is if I know that I'm not them. Like everything's me, I am everything, but what I mean is that like my identity is not wrapped up in anything other than really me trying to remind myself who it is I am. Like, and that's God, just like you. The I am, the God consciousness, the all, right? That's what you are. And if we identify with mine, you're gonna talk about this. We can get lost. We get tripped up, start scratching at things. Um, but no, I actually love these things because I know I love the one-on-ones. I love the YouTube stuff because I know that like maybe one day I go on to something else, and I'm gonna appreciate it while it's here. I can look back at my mom and say, "Wow, I love that woman. I don't need to fear our circumstance anymore. I don't need to fear or back then circumstances anymore. I don't need to fear her or be upset with her because like my mom, anything that anyone's doing that you think is upsetting you or that you're not anywhere, you're not where you want to be because of that is because you is because you're mad at someone for not remembering who they are, and you have a like a and you're not really fully aware of who you are, like in that moment, because I know it sounds strange, but everyone really is doing the best that they can, giving their level of consciousness, giving where they're at, giving what they've identified with, giving what like all that stuff. But who they actually are is God. Who you actually are is God. Who am I? Who I actually am is God. Doesn't mean we can't have cool experiences in the human form and make play of all this stuff, and even go through challenges and sadness and be human. But underneath it all, it's permanent. It's eternal. And if we know that, if we know that outside's not permanent, this human stuff's not permanent, nothing's permanent, then we don't need to really attach to anything as far as like, oh, I'm not gonna be okay if this doesn't happen because like everything changes. And we know that we are, God within, and that's we can always get back and remember that quote, be still and know that I am God. Um, I know I missed out a lot of stuff, but just know it was chaotic. Just know that it wasn't always, I didn't always have such a better understanding or even implement, like, wasn't really able to implement the way that I am now. Um, Everything's you. That's it. Um, it's not really any bigger than that. It's not, and then with that being said, it's not bigger than you. So I don't know. That's pretty much it. Basically, a life of outside in, and then sometimes things start to click when you realize that it's once you start with the inside out, some things start to click. I don't beat myself up anymore. I have goals and things like that I want to do, but again, they're not who I am. They're things that I want to embark on. They're things that I want to experience. But I have an underlying inner peace knowing that like it could be whatever. And I want to say thank you guys for. I wish I could have maybe given it more in detail. I think we're already at 37 minutes, but like I wish I could give more experience. But like I promise you, it really doesn't necessarily matter. I just wanted to hit on some like the failed relationships, definitely failed self concept, I guess if you want to look at it like that. Blame game, alcohol, escapism, jail, all of it. I've done it, and it was literally just a result of a state of being, of not knowing who I was. So maybe next time, like, so now when I see people who are like, maybe in those states, I can say, oh, they just don't remember who they are. I try to look at like Neville when he said like, no, don't look upon no man unfavorably, and like he means that because he's saying like, dude, like they're still God. Like, just because they're in a state does not change the fact that they're God. Like, also, I don't care where you are right now, or what your circumstance is showing you. Like, a circumstance is only showing you what you believe to be, like what you believe to be true, and how you believe things go, and how you feel about self. That's pretty much it. Like, you're still God. So it doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter how many times you may have messed up. Like, don't ever feel scared to approach me with anything about like, oh, this is the scenario that I have seen it all. I've been through it all. Like I said, violence. I've seen it all. My life was chaotic. Now it's not. So, and nothing changed out there in the world except for me. That's something I think about too. Like, the world's still the world. Everything's still going on, and things are presented to themselves when they're. People are presented with things when they are being that inside. But there's so many different worlds within the one world going on right now, and if you're experiencing one world that you deem unfavorable, you change the inner world, and then you will experience what comes with that. but no one's less than anybody. No one's better than anybody. Everyone's just in different states, experiencing what comes with that. They're judging self and then experiencing the judgment. Or accepting self, experiencing the acceptance. Same world. I mean, same God consciousness. Different little focal points going on. So that's all I got. Wish I had more for you, but that was a long time. All right, I love you guys. See you soon.